excuse me, rocking and rolling with this webinar. Again, good morning to everyone. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to chat them in, and they will be addressed as well as they can be. Judging by the number of people who signed up for this webinar, it is one that I don't know if it's popular and or it's well needed, but I do know that when it comes to self-care and well-being, for me, I'm really great at pointing it out for other people. I'm really, really bad at taking care of myself. So that's why I thought in this holiday season time, maybe we can do something just a little bit lighter. Okay. And I also want you to share whatever it is you do for self-care at the appropriate times. And I will ask that. And if you feel like sharing, great. And if you don't feel like sharing, that is great too. Okay. I want to say a few things about TAASA. And as you know, we are a statewide organization. We do trainings and policy work and prevention work, and we're dedicated to eliminating sexual violence in Texas for the dignity of all Texans and basically for all people. I want you to remember that if you join us, membership includes discounted TAASA conference registration, and I just finished reviewing a good chunk of the proposals, especially for advocacy, and I was blown away by what was there. You have the opportunity to elect and to serve, if you wish, on the TAASA's board of directors, and to help make a meaningful, informed impact by informing legislators and legislations about what we want to do as a community, as a state regarding sexual violence. So that can, and if you join, you can also help shape the direction of TAASA's work and amplify the voices of survivors in Texas. So that's just a pitch to help us join, for y'all to join. The other thing I want to say is that I wish that all this information came from all of my own research and it sprung from my own head, and that I was a fabulous thinker. I would love to understand, I would love for y'all to understand that I am not. You can share the information. What I would say to you is cite the sources, because I am not the source. Thank you. And I don't know who asked, but I see it flashing. Can I leave the post test up? More than 10 minutes after that, you have a staff meeting. I understand all of our time constraints. You can take the post test. It will come, Anna, in the an hour after in the follow-up email. So no worries about that. Okay. Any other housekeeping questions before I get going here? Okay. Alrighty then. So make a list of things that cause you stress. What causes me stress? Things that cause me stress. Take a moment to think about it. And I don't mean in the general big time picture, oh, this stresses, oh, the government stresses me out. I'm talking closer to home stuff here. And I'll share some of the things that cause me stress. Okay, there's no need for you to share it, but I'm going to share what gives me stress. Anything regarding technology, especially when it doesn't work the way I think it should. And I think the words there, the phrase that's more important than anything else is the way I think it should. Therefore, changing the clock in my car when the time changes from daylight savings time to, to regular time, to standard time, causes me more stress than I can imagine. And that in and of itself just starts making a layer of stuff that layers on top of that. And then I go, let's say, and open up my computer, my work computer, to start working, and I can't connect to the internet for whatever reasons. I've already started out being stressful. Okay. So that's what I'm talking about. Those little things that cause you stress. The little things like when you go and you forget to buy coffee and you now don't have coffee for your trip to the office in the morning. Falling behind at work, with family, with friends, with paying bills, not because you can't pay your bills, but because you're so focused on other things that all of a sudden you haven't paid your bills or you haven't sent a birthday card. Those little things pile up one on top of the other. And I want you to understand that we like to think that we have some control over what we do in our life. They don't work the way I think it should. That's about control. That's about me not going with the flow. And I would love, love, love for everybody to just think about that for a moment. Okay? Because what happens is we're under more. Are you under more stress than you realize when you start adding up all those little things? Is that about that? Because we might forget, but our bodies tell us something that is uniquely related to us. Your body is going to tell you when you're in stress. When we forget what's good for us, what is uniquely good for us, and I want to stress this, uniquely good for the person, because what is good for you may not be good for me and vice versa. So what's uniquely good for us, when we forget what that is, our bodies are going to remind us, first in small ways, which continue to grow if we continue to ignore the signs. Okay? It can start with a little bit of anxiety, you're not paying attention, your tummy starts to hurt, you don't pay attention to whatever the stressor is in your life. And the ultimate, if you don't pay attention, is you can end up with ulcers, which is extremely painful. With escalating anxiety, typically what we see is we get reckless, we get anxious, not all of us. We can get aggressive or emotional numbness or a rapid heartbeat, abdominal pain like we talked about. It is all uniquely to us. And that relationship with stress, unique to us. And everyone has their default for ugliness. Whatever it is, I know that I start to get jittery. When I'm under stress, it's not so much reckless, it's jitteriness. I can't sit still. I want to move around. I can't think in a straight line. I get a little bit nuts. So who's your weather vane? Who's the one who tells you which way they see the wind blowing for you? In other words, if I come home and my kids say to me, God, Mom, what's wrong with you? You're acting like a crazy person. Even though I don't like to hear it, even though the tone is disrespectful and there are better ways to say that, I can't throw that baby out with the bathwater. I have to pay attention and say, you know what? What are you seeing? And I dislike the way that you just talked to me. Two different things, two separate issues, okay? So who is it that's going to do that? When your friends say, we haven't seen you in a month of Sundays, Wendy, what is going on with you? Something is going on, and we need to understand and pay attention to that instead of saying, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm always available. You guys just don't ask me out anymore, which can happen if people ask you out repeatedly and you keep saying no. But when people tell you their concerns about you, maybe the best response is, what are you seeing? Tell me what it is that you're seeing. Because stress in and of itself, especially at the beginning stages, is not necessarily a bad thing if you start paying attention to the cues and clues that your body is sending you, your loved ones are sending to you, your professional peers are giving to you. This information can cause self-reflection and corrective action. And that is probably one of the best ways that A, you can support yourself, B, you can support your colleagues, and C, start to make a foundation for self-care and well-being, because we already work in a field where we give and give and give and give and give and end up going home exhausted. And then when we get home, we're expected by our families oftentimes, or we perceive that we're expected to give more. So I'm going to talk about, quote, the bad stuff first and transition into, quote, the good stuff. I hope this is going to be thought-provoking for everyone, and I'm going to also hope that it engenders some reflection and discussion amongst in the chat or amongst you and your family, your friends, your professional peers. Okay. Impairment doesn't always take an obvious form like substance abuse, and I think that's important for us to remember. We can start seeing improper behavior happening. And I don't know how that looks like for you. I know that when I was doing direct services, improper behavior on my part was being short, and that's a nice way for it. For survivors, for me starting to cuss at people in my head, and thank goodness it didn't come out of my mouth. But that is one of the ways of the snowballing effect, which impacted my effectiveness, because if I was already thinking negatively towards something, it was going to take a huge mental shift for me to get to being positive or saying something that wasn't negative, or maybe even, I hope I never did this, victim blaming. And I know I probably have from time to time. Okay. It can also, because it is snowballing and we're missing the warning signs, especially in our professional life, the inability to set appropriate boundaries. And by that, I mean, we are so, I know what to do, I know what's needed. So you rush in to make decisions that are not ours to make, they're the survivors to make. Or we try to fix the problem, which is also about us not rushing in and taking the empowerment that we are trying to give back to the survivor away from them. And that is what is doing that. Or there's a breach of confidentiality, which goes under those improper behaviors, which is, what would be, how does that happen that you would breach confidentiality? And instead of talking to someone and saying, I have something, and you name the person, or you name the details of the case, or you say, that sexual harassment goes along with it, and they've already filed with the EEOC and they've talked to a civil attorney. That's breaching confidentiality when you start giving away the case information about what happened in that case. So we have to be careful like that. Negligence about what? Not referring to appropriate resources or failing to. Can you think of other ways that improper behavior or stress or the snowballing personal stressors that you might have in your life can cause you to react in an unprofessional way. And sometimes the professional impinges upon the personal. And I'm going to give you an example of that. I was working doing direct services in the shelter. There was an incident that occurred. I was supposed to leave at 5 o'clock. I was supposed to pick up one of my children from a school dance at 7:30, I think it was, in the evening. And I was still filing paperwork at 8:30, I think it was, when I got a call from the principal to tell me that if I didn't get over there, they were going to call CPS on me. We get so involved sometimes with things that are important, and we understand that they're important, that we forget other things that are also just as important. So the impairment, missing the warning signs, these are important things that we need to remember. Okay, so if you have other things that have happened to you, pay attention to them and how that happens. Okay, so 7 signs that you are too stressed. All right, stress is a force to be reckoned with. According to the American Psychological Association, in August of 2007, they did a survey of about 3,500 people. 75, I think a little over 3,000 were done in English and close to 300 were done in Spanish. 75% of the respondents reported that in the month of August, they experienced at least one symptom of chronic stress. And that is anger, mood swings, problems sleeping, anxiety, irritability, poor concentration, nightmares, flashback, aggression. I want to make a distinction here between chronic stress versus acute stress. Acute stress is something that happens to us and it's short term, although it can escalate into chronic, which means ongoing stress. And acute stress can lead to chronic stress, which can often have unfortunate and very negative consequences. I'm going to give an example. Just remember, these are extreme. Getting stuck in a traffic jam on your way to work every day. And you leave early and you still get stuck. And you leave earlier and you still get stuck. And it is ongoing day after day after day. And on one particular day, you left for work after having an ongoing heated argument with a family member. Your supervisor has criticized you before you left the day before. And now you're sitting in traffic, and in and of themselves, all these things that I've just listed, all these incidents are acute. Add them together with the fact that you are now stuck in traffic, late for work again, and someone just gave you the finger. You snap, which leads to an unfortunate incident like road rage. Or you turn the car, you get off at the next exit and you turn the car around and you run away and tell no one where you are and you disappear for the day because you can't take it anymore. Or you end up walking into your job and quitting. These are all unfortunate consequences. So let's take a look at these 7 signs. Okay. One is, feeling edgy or unsettled. Do you have an overwhelming to-do list where you feel that you have to hurry up to get it done because you're constantly racing towards ever shifting grant deliverables or more people on your caseload that you need to deal with. Chronic stress, feeling edgy, feeling unsettled is a first sign. But if we don't tend to it, chronic stress causes wear and tear on our bodies and minds. And when we start to rush, when we think we've forgotten something, we start making careless mistakes. We become forgetful. We have trouble concentrating. We become more irritable. We can't sleep. Exhaustion begins to rule. Burnout can occur. I'm just giving broad brushstrokes here. Like I said, everybody is unique, and having a different, how you respond to this is going to play a huge role in what you do, how you do it, and how you take care of yourself. But I can remember that constant pressure, and I still feel it today, to hurry up and get it done, whatever it is. All right. Hair loss. This is interesting because chronic stress can cause your hair to fall out. Now, hair can fall out for many, many reasons. It can be genetic. It can be a thyroid disease. It can have because you have low vitamin levels, or anemia, or a protein deficiency, or after pregnancy, or menopause, or stress, like we've just talked about. So if you are having and experiencing a significant hair loss, please contact a medical professional to find out exactly what is wrong, because this is a condition that needs to be corrected. Okay. You ever wake up with your jaw feeling really sore? You have muscle tightness in your forehead and your neck and your shoulders, and tension headaches? You go to the dentist again and see what's going on with your jaw, because that's what it can be. These grinding your teeth and clenching your jaw while you're sleeping, that's going to cause something. That's a sign that your body's under stress. You're probably not sleeping well, but you're also waking up with a stiff neck, or your shoulders hurt. These are clues that something is going on. Okay, spiraling negative thoughts. This can lead you down a rabbit hole, depending on your personal makeup, for low self-esteem and depression. I worked with a woman once who, when she was going to pick up her kids from school, confessed to me that everything she heard during the day, or she didn't confess, she stated to me that everything she heard from her clients during the day, she was running through in her mind as she was going to pick up her children from daycare, and was thinking, oh my God, my child could have, and was all the things that she had heard and had blown completely out of proportion, so that by the time she got there, she expected to find her children impaired in some way, shape, or form. That's a horrible way to live your life. We need to understand that when there is a spiraling negative thought going through our heads and we're going down a rabbit hole, how do we stop ourselves? Is there a biofeedback or some way that you can take a mental health stuff? Like I said, I'm talking about the bad stuff first. I'm going to talk about the good stuff later on, but I want you to keep all of these things in mind as we move forward. All right. One of the things, as I was doing research for this, that made me go, oh my goodness, is aggravated allergies. If you live in Texas, and especially Central Texas, which they call the allergy capital of the world, under stress, the body releases histamine, which is the basis or the compound in allergic reactions. And that starts the process of sneezing, watery eyes. But you know what else goes into it? Itchy ear canals. And if you are, when allergies flare up, you are going, and you're under stress, it can make it harder to get to sleep and to stay asleep. Can you think of reasons why that would make allergies would make it harder to get to sleep and to stay asleep? Anybody? It's all about breathing, not being able to breathe, coughing, your body not being able to get comfortable because it's not getting enough oxygen. And then you can't fend off illness. And I know that when my allergies get so aggravated, and if I'm not paying attention and I'm not taking care, it's not that I can get asthma attacks, which has happened. It can also lead me down the path to getting bronchitis. So I want us to think about that as we move forward and we're not paying attention to what we're doing. The next thing is feeling way too wired to sleep. All right? When you've got adrenaline coursing through your body, through your veins, this can make a person feel edgy, fidgety, and it's hard to get to sleep and you wake up not rested. So when you have a hard time falling to sleep, the next day you have trouble focusing and forgetfulness, and this is my favorite go-to, dependence on caffeine to get me through the day. And I will tell you quite clearly and not proudly at all that I am very dependent upon caffeine, which is not good for me. And I'm trying, let's just leave it there. Okay, this is the advocate's curse, the inability to lose weight. Oh, we can gain it just fine. We have the inability to lose weight. And part of that is going with the lack of sleep and the anxiety. Our bodies crave high-fat comfort foods. Oh my God. And on top of the hectic on-the-go lifestyle, fast food makes life so much easier to stop and pick up something at a fast food restaurant. The other part of the gaining weight or the inability to lose it is that stress slows our metabolisms and it starts storing the fat as visceral fat deep in our bellies, deep in our abdomens, and that is very hard to lose. If we don't pay attention and take it to the extreme, this can lead to diabetes, heartburn, acid reflux, and heart disease. Like I said, the extremes. So if we find that we're having an inability to lose weight or we're gaining weight, we might want to take a look at what's going on with us and what we're eating or not eating and what we're feeding our family as well and what we're setting all of us up for. Okay. These are the 7 signs of stress that maybe we didn't know about, simple signs that we didn't know about. Stress is part of a negative emotion, or it leads to negative emotions, which often prompts, and if you were feeling this, guilt, which is the mama of all negative emotions, okay? And promotes feel of failure as a parent, as an advocate, as a friend, as a family member, as a fill in your bank. If you are feeling guilty, you're feeling guilty for a reason. And guilt is often a double-edged sword. It is something that can be done to us. I don't know about anyone else, but I have often been guilted into doing something that I didn't want to do. And we can use it to guilt others or guilt someone into doing something they can do. Guilt can also be paralyzing. People often feel guilty for things that they did or didn't do. Okay? Uh, they did or they didn't do. Okay? So we're going to talk about the 5 types of guilt. Something you did. Because guilt is an emotion about an action. And because it's an emotion about an action, you can use the guilt to motivate yourself into doing a different and hopefully healthier action. If you have, okay, if you have caused harm to another, guilt and remorse are expected reactions. That's part of your natural reaction to doing something that you feel guilty about, that you know harmed somebody. So apologize where safe, when it's safe, correct the wrong, and try to do better in the future by fill in the blank. What do you think would do that? All right. If you violated your own ethical or moral code, oh my goodness, you're going to feel guilty. People have heard me talk about one of my sisters, and I use my sisters, my family, my kids as examples all the time. They know it. If they have told me specifically, stop it, I do, and I don't use them. But most people know that I went to Catholic school. My family, my siblings, we all went to Catholic school. And one of my sisters to this day cannot tell a lie because her ethical code, the way she was raised, her moral code says that if you tell a lie, the flames of hell are licking at your heel and you are going to burn in hell forever. That is what she thinks. She can't get it out of her mind. She's been that way since she was 6 years old. And for her, even though she realizes that it may be irrational to this day, if she tells you something, take it to the bank because she cannot violate her own ethical and moral code around that. And we all have something like that in our lives, okay? All right. So I want to also say that shame goes along with guilt. Shame is guilt's first cousin. Guilt concerns others. So therefore, even though it is internal to some way, in some way, shape, and form, it is also external. Shame is internal. It's an inner dialogue we have. It's our self-talk about our negative self-worth. If one feels worthless, guilty, enmeshed in negative thoughts about themselves, I urge you, please, to make an appointment with a mental health professional to get you out of that downward spiral. Okay? So, again, there are 5 types of guilt. We talked about one. So, guilt for something you did comes in many forms. You know what else goes into this guilt thing here for something you did or didn't do? Is parent guilt. Guilt that you didn't do something and you ruined your children because you actually did something wrong. That's not true, okay? All right. There's no doubt that an action occurred, but the problem starts when we begin to obsess over this action that we did something wrong. So, something you did in the past cannot be undone, no matter how much you wish you can undo it. Move on. Figure out what went wrong and figure out what you're going to do differently in the future. And one more thing. We assume that others place far more importance on our thoughts and our actions than they actually do. You know, an example of that is you're feeling guilty about an inadvertent slight that you may have given to someone and they weren't even aware of it. It didn't even penetrate their consciousness. My mom guilt for me is about when I was in grad school and I was studying and I was working full time and my kids were in sports full time, and I would go to their games and I'd sit in their bleachers and I would surround myself with other parents and I would try to study as best I can. And I would tell the other parents, when my son or daughter comes up or is making a fabulous play, poke me so I can watch it. I felt so guilty that I didn't pay attention to the games. I also felt guilty that I wasn't studying. And you know what? My kids never even knew that I was studying in the stands. They thought I was paying attention to everything. So there you have it. You can't, we make assumptions because we feel bad, but that's not about it. Okay, something you didn't do. All right. This is a tough type of guilt to handle because it's true that you didn't actually commit the act and you're still thinking and so you're still on your moral high ground, if you will. However, you know that the fact that we're even contemplating an act violates our standards and can make us feel just as guilty as provoking the act itself. People can't read our minds. We think they can, they can't. Let go of it. All right. Guilt for something you think you did goes along with something you didn't do. At some level, we know we're being illogical. And it's hard to get rid of, to rid ourselves completely of this belief. We also know that our memory for past events is really flawed. How do we know this? This has to do with the neurobiology of secondhand trauma that we live with every day. This has to do with our lives being complicated and rushed. So when we remember things, just think of it this way. When officers investigate a crime scene, they're going to ask everybody who they think or canvass everybody that they think might have seen it, and they're going to get a million different answers. They're looking for consistency and not the outlier. So understand that what you remember may be an outlier, and it's quite possible you didn't do anything wrong. You just thought it. But we tend to misremember, particularly when we're highly charged about feeling wrong. Okay, so how do we guilt for something you think you did? All right, I just baked up a batch of stuff for Thanksgiving, and I thought that what I did was put in salt instead of sugar because I wasn't paying attention. And I was so guilty because I had taken it over to my niece's house 2 days before and came back and looked at the kitchen and went, oh my God. And I felt so guilty and I told everyone not to eat it. And you know what? I didn't do that. I didn't do that. So before you start accusing yourself, make sure that the wrong thing actually took place and you actually had something to do with it. Okay. Guilt that you didn't do enough to help someone. All right. Maybe you have someone in your life who you love and they're ill or they need your help. And given your hours and your other commitments, you have given them as much as your free time as you possibly can. And now you have other obligations. And the guilt begins to get to you, and you are there trying to figure out all sorts of crazy schemes to keep helping despite the toll that it's taking on you. When you are an empty well, you have nothing left to give. You are drained, and that will make you effectively less effective at work. It's draining you. So having a way to deal with something, when you can't do enough, pass the baton off to someone who can, or suggest ways that can help. I had some surgery done, and I was not able to go to the store. I tried to do all the grocery shopping I could before. I couldn't roll my trash down to the curb. I couldn't roll my trash can back up on trash days when it was empty. There were a lot of things I could not do. I didn't want to stress my children out because, you know, they don't live at home anymore, but they don't live that far away, because I am constant caretaker and don't accept the help as readily as maybe I should. And I figured out, you know, I sat down with them and I said, there's some things that I need help with that I cannot do. I'm fortunate that I live in a suburban area where if I want to go grocery shopping, I can do it online and they will deliver to my house. That's great. But other things like bending over or pushing the vacuum was not in the cards. Who could help me with that? And we figured it out. But acting out of guilt and me feeling guilty about what I thought I was imposing on them feeling guilty that they weren't doing enough to help me, this is not in the cards. That makes nothing good for anyone, okay? And the fifth type of guilt, that you're doing better than someone else. We're often guilty when we're talking with our clients, our survivors, that we survived the same thing and they're not. We have conflicting emotions about that because we want to help, and at the same time, they are not us. We have emotions about time and money and success that have been put into us that we have, about having more than maybe our parents or our brothers or sisters. And maybe we start to do some self-destructive behaviors to ensure that we won't be success, whether that includes dropping out of school or not going for a promotion, whatever that is, or guilt that we're doing better than someone and they think we're making more money than we are, and we're not confirming or denying that, and then we end up spending more money on gifts or presents or cars or a house when we don't have the money to do that without being realistic. Okay, so there's no doubt in my mind that guilt is a very complex emotion, and you cannot live a completely guilt-free life. You can't keep it within manageable bounds. I like this one. Santa going, Santa saying, sometimes I just don't read my mail, and I love that. Okay, background noise. I'm going to try to take care of that right now. Everybody, if you are on the phone, please mute yourselves. Okay. If not, then you are going to, I should have taken care of the noise problem. Okay, thanks for chatting that in. Okay. All right. Okay, so sometimes Santa doesn't even read his mail. Guilt in and of itself isn't destructive because Santa still brings presents at Christmas. But if you let it become all-consuming, it can get the worst of you. Before I continue, I want everyone to be aware how well-being, your well-being, is deeply connected to ethical standards, our professional ethical standards. And for today, I'm going to use the National Victim Assistance Standards Consortium, and I urge you to read it and connect the dots to wellness. So here we go. All right. It's your ability to serve effectively. We place a high priority on our own personal care, because if we can't do it, we're not going to do well. Okay? And what that means for you. Integrity. These interactions depend on our internal well-being and being comfortable in our own skin. Okay? So we have pressures. We become less competent. You can read this. Our mental and physical health can affect what we do and can create ethical problems because of our, problems when it comes to our ability to help clients. Okay? Because we're going to have to give them a lot of information. And the information we give and the resources we give depends upon our ability to assess facts correctly, identify a relevant ethical standard, practical concerns that impact decision making, assess possible courses of action, consequences of various courses of action, selection of a best option, and evaluation of the outcome. And this is nothing we can do effectively for our clients if we are impaired. All right. So we're moving on to self-care and well-being. Advocates bring their strengths and their vulnerabilities to work with them every day. And in the most case, advocates tend to care for others before they tend to care for themselves. And generally, advocates go home exhausted. Can you envision a future where effective self-care is embedded and truly valued and promoted and supported by you, for you, within yourself, your agency, and your family? And what would that look like? And I have a question to ask. Has the background noise diminished? All right. So here comes something that looks a little out of place here, like I've gone down a rabbit hole. It's called Grandma's pumpkin bread. This is the original recipe, right? I want you to look at this. I don't know where the original recipe comes from. I remember hearing my grandma saying that this is Grandma's pumpkin bread recipe. I have no idea if she was referring to her grandma or herself, or if she got it from someone else who said to her, this is my grandma's pumpkin bread recipe. I know this seems a little bit out of place, but I'm going to tie it back in later on. Okay? But I want you to keep this and look at this. And I think I added in ingredients here like baking soda that was not in the original recipe. I got a little carried away. All right. All right. Usually when one starts thinking about wellness training, the words intentionality, mindfulness, breath work float to the surface. And we're assured that this is the way to be. And I find these principles interesting, and yet I don't understand how to incorporate them totally into my life. Some people can do it very easily, and some people like me can't, and I know it's on a continuum. So I want to think of myself as being able to use specific strategies in my life that will make me feel better, that maybe are based on some of this and maybe not. Because what I have found out is wellness and well-being is not a one-size-fits-all. It's not a one-size-fits-all thing. Just like stress, flourishing is also unique to the person. It's uniquely about you. It's about what you're feeling right now, what fills you up emotionally, physically, psychologically, spiritually, professionally in a healthy way. And I believe that if wellness isn't personalized and simple, I am not going to make the choice to practice what is necessary, important to me. And I extrapolate that that is not going to be, if it's not personalized for you, you're not going to incorporate those practices into what is important to you. All right. You know that surgery I was talking about? I'm using it as an example. I had a surgery on my knee. And when I had surgery on my knee, my orthopedic surgeon said to me, these are my goals for you. You are going to be, after surgery, you're going to go to physical therapy. You are going to be able to bend your knee 130 degrees, blah, blah. And he had all these goals. And I'm sure that they were medical goals and that he had to list them and say them because of whatever medical ethics provide. But you know what? When I got to physical therapy, my physical therapist said to me, Wendy, what is it that you want to be able to do? And I said, I want to be able to sit in a chair. That's bending your knee to about 90 degrees. I don't think I've ever bent my knee, as an aside. I don't think I've ever bent my knee to 130 degrees ever in my life, but that's just me. I said, I want to be able to go on walks with my friends because I enjoy that. I want to be able to go hiking. I want to be able to have some balance and stability in my knee so that I can run around the backyard and kick the ball with the kids. That kind of stuff. I'm not a runner. I'm a walker. I want to be able to stand for certain periods of time. And that's the goals that we worked on because that was important to me. And because we personalized my goals, I became more invested in my physical therapy than I would have been if there was some unobtainable goals that the surgeon wanted that was not my goals. Is that making sense to everyone? Okay, so no one size fits all. You have to understand your values, your personal beliefs in order, in order to do your values, several things need to happen. And that is we have to clarify what our personal values are. And one of the values, that we form and develop is it comes as a result of the way we were raised. Religion plays a part in this, social organizations, customs, education, community experiences. One of the things that gives me great joy and pleasure is when I have a few grandkids and when they bring up a book and they ask me, they want to sit in my lap and they want me to read it to them. I had to have my knees strong enough to hold them in my lap. That's a value I hold. Where it came from, I don't know. I remember sitting in my grandma's lap and her reading me stories. I remember sitting in my, my great aunt's lap, stuff like that. So that's something that gave me pleasure as a child. It is a personal value and I want to play that forward. So I had to become conscious of when I was asked what were my goals in physical therapy, again, as an example, what was it that I wanted? And I became conscious and I named it and I started to understand how my values affected the way my knee moves. And I know that's a stretch, but it's true. So because once I became aware of all of that, I then had some personal self-insight. And if I wasn't going to be able to hold a child on my knee to read a book, what was the next best solution as I was moving forward with that? And that was important to me. So find out what that is for you and take a look at it. Take a look at the cultural values you have. If you're working in this field and you love your job, you probably have some values or some beliefs about equality and freedom and safety and other stuff like that falls under the bigger value of social justice. Where did that come from for you? For most of us, we have the idea that hard work equals success. I understand that hard work equals success. In our economy, hard work and success are usually tied up with money. That's how we learned it. If you work hard, you're going to have the American dream of a car and a house, and you're going to be able to put your kids through college. In the field that we work in, we are not paid enough money to do that. Generally speaking, we are not paid enough money to do that. So what does our hard work, how do you define success? What does that mean? Is it little things that you define success in? Like in my professional experience, success was when I was able to help translate the original protective orders 25 years ago into Spanish. My success was being able to identify that people who were going to read the protective order needed a way to translate the legalese into plain English, that it could be given to libraries and law libraries and courthouses across the state of Texas. I didn't do that solely by myself, but I was able to work on that, and that was a huge success. So how do we hold those beliefs and translate what becomes success as opposed to what isn't success for us? What is workable and what is not workable, and how you hold that is important. If you believe that your beliefs and values are superior to others, which others are you referring to? And how can this cause stress in your professional life and your personal life? And are you even aware of this? So we need to be aware of our values in order to clear up some of the stresses that we may be seeing. Okay, the other thing that I think is so important is for you to define for yourself what self-care is and what well-being is. And these are the definitions that I came up with. Some of them, the self-care came from something that, a study that came out in 2003, and I liked it. But the other thing I need to ask is, are your definitions flexible, changeable under different circumstances? Okay, because every circumstance is different. How do you advocate your own self-care and your own well-being under very stressful situations? And that is really important. I don't like, well, I shouldn't say I don't like to cuss. I cuss like a sailor. I cuss worse than a sailor. I cuss worse than the detectives and the police officers that I've worked around because I've learned it from them. But I have cussed all my life, very creatively. And when I get into situations where people are, when I state exactly what I need and what I want for my own self-care and well-being, and people continue to ignore it, I tend to get really loud, and I really start to cuss. So I'm going to talk about self-care from a couple of angles. One is psychological. Okay, we talk about self-reflection, but you know what? Self-reflection comes in many different ways, shapes, and forms for people. Some people do it by meditating, which is fine. Some people do it by journaling and then going back and reading what they did that. Some people do this by going to therapy, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with any of them. Some people psychologically need sensory engagement. Sensory engagement means maybe aromatherapy, maybe baking and smelling all the spices and stuff or whatever you're putting into that, or the smell as it's baking. Or the sensory engagement, it can be the physical engagement with actually having to mix everything up. Art can be psychological self-care in the sense that maybe you're finger painting or drawing, but for some people like me, going to a museum is wonderful. I love it. or listening to music or going to the theater. And if you live in rural areas, um, going to a local community college when they have that they put on art exhibits, or even the local elementary schools or junior highs or high schools, when they put on their art shows, just going and looking at it is great. Relaxing in the sun and gardening provide two important things. Sun absorption gives you vitamin D, which is very important for your physical health. Okay, gardening, not only is it something that people love to do because of the flowers and the colors and the prettiness of it, but also it is an exercise. Some people like to read self-help books or join a support group, which is great if you can do that. I can't read self-help books in the evening before I go to bed because I end up sitting up all night thinking about it. That's me. Figure out what's okay with you. I just heard of a group that is a kind of a book club, a diet support group. And what they do is they meet once a month. They look at uh, cookbooks that are good for your health, like the diet cookbooks that the Diabetes Association puts out, or I'm just talking whatever it is. And they have a potluck once a month using the recipes. They share it. They talk about healthy eating for them and what they found out. And I thought that's a great way to gain support. And I think I'm going to try that. Okay. Think about your positive qualities. And if you're having problems doing that, I'm going to suggest that maybe you ask your friends or your peers, your professional peers, to tell you what your positive qualities are. And when that happens, think about how that manifests in your life and what you're doing and how you can do more of it. And practice asking for help and then receiving the help. That is not a sin or a crime. And as advocates, at least for me personally, I am so bad at asking for help. And it's like sort of kind of couched in, I sort of kind of would appreciate it if, instead of saying, I need someone to take my trash bin down to the curb because I can't push it and I up or down. And when receiving it, understanding that when I receive the help, to be grateful for it and to thank the person, and that is all that is needed. I have a really hard time with that. We've got physical self-care, and part of the physical self-care is housing. And what does that mean, and how does that change over time? For me in particular, and I use me, safe housing means that my house is my sanctuary. I come in and I put down everything and I can go, oh yes, I am home, and I enjoy my physical space in the house. For other people, it means, do your doors lock? Do you have bars on your windows? Whatever that means for you, take care of it. For medical care, some of us don't have insurance, but the Affordable Health Care Act says that you are entitled to one free checkup a year. Use it. Take care of it. If there are clinics that you can go to that you can use on a sliding scale fee, great. Do you have people in your community like acupuncturists or dentists who will allow you, your client, to set up a sliding scale fee with them, who will do it for a greatly discounted rate? I found an acupuncturist years ago, and I still use her to this day, who does like experimentation with different things and writes things down. And I'm her guinea pig, or one of her guinea pigs, in exchange for when I have bad allergy attacks or when my knee starts to hurt badly. She gives me the treatments for free. It's bartering treatments for free in exchange for, and we can do that in a healthy way. Eating healthy. What does that mean to you? You know, eating healthy to me means something very different than you. There is a mom and pop Mexican restaurant that I love to go to. And Poppy ended up getting, has diabetes. And when they discovered this, mom went back in and reworked all of her recipes so that they would be diabetic friendly without losing the flavor. I love that. I talked about it in my little community. There is also a Chinese restaurant or an Asian restaurant, let's say, and when they found out that that's what the Mexican restaurant was doing, they went in and changed all their stuff to be diabetically friendly too. Guess which two places I love to go out and eat in? Because I know, and I've asked them, will they share their recipes? The answer is really not yes. However, when you know that that's available, can you go in and kind of play around with recipes? I mean, what does that look like? Do you does healthy eating meaning turning off your cell phones while you're eating, not texting, talking to people, finding out about their days? What does that mean to you? Exercise in a way that makes sense to you and to no one else but you. All right. It doesn't mean making time. Exercise for me can look like this. When I'm in the office, and I walk around and I check in with people. That's a little bit of exercise. I'm getting in some steps. When I come home from work, if I'm thinking about something, I don't want to bring it into my house. I have walking shoes in my car. I put them on. I'll walk around the block a time or two, wave to my neighbors. It gets me out into the sunlight. It gets me some exercise. Do I set aside some time for exercise? Yeah. Do I always get to it? No. But what does it mean to you? Do you like to do water aerobics? Do you make it fun? Make exercise fun. If you like to go antiquing, go somewhere with friends and talk about what you can do. That kind of exercise. Get out and move. That's the best thing you can do for yourself. Being sexual, there's a big difference between sex and being sexual. And I like to think of being sexual as doing things that celebrate me. Like me asking for a hug from someone I love, or taking a walk, or doing something that fills me up and brings joy to me. That can be, however you want to define it, that's fine. All right. Time off, I call that me time, however you want to define it. And it often goes hand in hand with being sexual. If you are taking some time off for you, however you define it, it can mean, you know what, I'm closing the door here, I'm taking a bubble bath, or I'm just going to soak in a warm tub with some Epsom salts, and I'm just going to listen to some music, and I am just going to let go of everything. Whatever that is, however you want to take the time off. When I was that knee surgery operation I talked about, when I was in the hospital, there are two things I love for breakfast that I don't indulge in very often. One of them is pancakes and one of them is grits. Hospital food is notoriously bad. And when I was in the hospital, they brought me grits that looked like a sea of gray slush. And they brought me pancakes for breakfast that could have been Frisbees. When I got out of the hospital, I decided that when I was well enough to get in my car and drive and sit in the seat, I was going to go to my favorite restaurant where I get grits and pancakes. And I was going to order one pancake and one small cup of grits and a fried egg and go to town on them, because that was going to be something that I wanted to do to make, reestablish my emotional connection to grits and pancakes. I understand that that sounds absurd, but that is what being good to yourself is all about. Taking vacations doesn't necessarily mean you have to go away somewhere. It is disconnecting from everything that you have, that you and taking advantage of the things that you enjoy, and letting go of work, not taking any work at all. Sometimes vacations for me is about reading about a book or a culture, or investigating a culture that I know nothing about. Sleep is so very important that it's now being called sleep hygiene, and I have a whole slide on this. I want you to know that down at the bottom, www.sleeporg.com is .org, I'm sorry, www, go to it, look at it, figure it out, because I could go on and on and on and on about it. Most adults need 7 to 10 hours of sleep per night to feel well rested, although everyone is different. Sleep is so good, and when we don't get it, there's so many major things that could go wrong. And so figure out what's important to you. How do you make some changes in your hygiene thing? Like the first step may be, how do you create a pleasant environment in your bedroom? If your bedroom is littered with stuff, can you clear it out? How do you make it comfortable for you? Are your mattress and your pillows, are they comfortable? They say that the best way to sleep is between 60 and 67 degrees. I'm too cold at that temperature, but other people aren't. Do you have a regular bedtime routine that you start maybe an hour before you go to bed by, reading something that's soothing to you, taking a warm bath or a shower, drinking a cup of chamomile tea, trying to avoid anything that's emotionally upsetting, natural light. Like I said, I live more in a suburban community, and my backyard looks out on actually almost nothing. I leave the blinds open because I like the natural light. I usually go to wake up naturally when the light starts getting lighter. But if you don't, did you know that they sell clocks that when it's about 30 minutes before you wake up, it starts getting brighter and brighter and brighter? That's a much more natural way to wake up than having that alarm clock buzz at you, which often startles me awake. Or some of them play soothing sounds instead of that buzzing sound. So figuring out what it is. You don't want to eat food that's going to cause you heartburn or, spicy. You want everything to get digested at least 2 or 3 hours. Exercising early in the day, even 10 minutes of just walking, is going to help you sleep at night. You don't want to really drink caffeine, or naps during the day. So just think about ways that can take care of you. Emotional self-care, affirmations, figure out what you want to tell yourself. I will, it's always about you. I will, it's in the present. I will quit smoking with ease and joy. I am joyfully celebrating my graduation from fill in the blank. I am walking on the stage to receive my diploma. It's envisioning, it's taking you there and there now. We show so much self-compassion and so much love for others. How about turning it inward on ourselves? Crying is great. It's a way to get things out. And I sometimes cry at commercials because they touch me, not because they're so wonderful as opposed to being sad. Watch movies, funny movies if you want to be lifted, or sad ones if you need to cry. Make whatever those movies are for you, do that. Find a hobby. And a hobby can be making a vision board. It can also be antiquing or restoring furniture. It can be something that brings you joy. It can also be volunteering. All right. I worked with a woman who, the work we do is hard. She used to say that feeding the hungry was her hobby. Don't do the same. If you're in the field of homelessness, volunteering to something in that field may not be a hobby. However, if you're in the field of sexual assault or domestic violence advocacy, maybe going and volunteering to uh, teach children literacy skills that's something different. Okay. um, Cuddling with a pet, or maybe even getting one of those weighted blankets, which are, I know, very very, very good. And practice forgiveness. Forgive yourself. You know, forgiveness is for you and for no one else. I always say, don't allow people to live rent free in my head. You're not going to do that. I'm evicting you. You cannot take up this space. And focus on the wonderful things that, or the wonderful feelings that are going on, and not the wounded ones. Flip that script and take that feeling and make it into something positive. Look for joy and love and beauty and gratitude and kindness and what you learned from that anger or revenge that you're feeling. You know what? Because living well, or a well-lived life, is really the best revenge. So articulate what happened and then seek peace and understanding around it, or depersonalize it. You know, that's, it cannot be a stress in your life. Figure out all these things you can find online, ways to forgive, things to forgive, how you can forgive in a way that makes self to you. The PDF will come in an hour in the follow-up email. So here are things for practicing forgiveness. There's spiritual self-care, and we don't talk about spiritual stuff often, partly because we get confused between spirituality and religion. Spirituality and religion means that there are going to, our grants often don't allow us to do that. So we need to understand what spirituality means and what inspires you. So what is self-reflection? What does it mean to you? Do you go into nature and see things? Can you find a spiritual community, however you define it? What does meditation mean to you? Is singing or dancing or creating art a spiritual thing for you? Playing with children can also be deeply spiritual. Watching them, that pure joy that they have, the way that they just laugh and create without boundaries and borders. For me, bathe in the ocean. And I say that from my own personal experience, because I grew up not far, very close to the ocean. We were in it every day. And because we were in it every day, my father thought it was really, really important for us to go to learn how to read the riptides and the currents, and to be able to swim and to save ourselves, blah, blah, blah. So I learned at a fairly early age. My sisters and I learned at a very early age how to swim out past the breakers and just go out there and relax and bathe in the ocean. We used to call it sister time, because if we wanted to tell secrets, we could go out there where no one could hear us. Those are the things that are spiritual self-care, things that bring you joy and happiness. Okay? Personal self-care. Learn who you are, and that could be another hobby for you. What does your genealogy say about you? And you know what? There are genealogy groups at your local library. Use them. You don't need to do that ancestry DNA stuff, or belong to some organization that causes you to join them and pay for a membership. But learn about that. And what do you want to know about yourself? What are your short-term, long-term goals? And how do you make short-term goals to reach your long-term goals? You know this. Going out on a date doesn't necessarily mean with a romantic partner, though it does mean that. It also means taking yourself out on a date, like when I made the commitment to take myself out on a date to go eat the grits and pancakes, okay, or having coffee with friends, or doing something special. All right, getting out of debt is really important. And I knew it was important because it stressed me out. And finally, I was trying to do the best I could by just doing research. You know what? One day I went to a party, and I met a professional peer. It was coincidence, and her husband was a financial planner. And I told him, he was talking about debt. I didn't ask him because I don't think it's okay to ask doctors about, oh, look at this cut that I have, at social gatherings. And I told him what I did, and he told me that I could come talk to him for free anytime. He helped me so much that what I'm going to tell you is, if you can meet with a financial planner, great. Is there someone who is already coming into your organization to help the survivors you work with? If not, is there a school, whether it's a community college or a university in your area, where someone is studying, like getting their master's or their PhD in personal finances, who can help you? Or is there a bank or a banker or someone who knows a lot about personal finances who can give you tips? Because what was applicable for me at my stage of life and my income is not applicable towards anyone else. Again, it is tailored to you. But someone who can give you guidance for where you are in the here and now and where you want to go financially. Okay. 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 Vacations, I talked about reading a book, and make a plan. Making a plan is, sort of kind of simple. You pick a goal. You make a plan for what it is. You sit down and analyze it to understand if it is realistic. And one of the ways you can do that is talking with professional peers. It's also talking with friends. And then you get to work. You set goals. You celebrate small successes, and you keep going. Okay? Here's the deal. It's not about, I'm going to use a plan. I'm going to make a goal. I'm going to pick a goal. I want to be able to lose at least 10 pounds by my birthday. These are the ways that I want to do it. My birthday's in like 6 months. Originally I said I want to lose 40 pounds. Okay, that might not be realistic, but I can certainly lose 10 pounds. Okay, so I make a plan. This is what I'm going to do. These are the realistic things that I can do. I can, do a little bit more exercise by walking a little bit more. Instead of walking 2 or 3 days a week, 2 or 3 miles, I can walk 4 or 5 days a week for 3 miles. I can watch my food intake and eat things that are healthy. And I understand that this is Christmas time, or holiday time, so there's going to be foods. I don't have to eat all of them. I can eat portions of them. I can get to work. I'm not setting this off for the first of the year. I'm starting today. And today means that I'm going to watch what I'm intaking. And when I get on the scale once a week and I have lost even a quarter of a pound, I'm going to do a little victory dance, and I am going to do something that, whatever it is, to celebrate. Whether that means that I am going to, I don't know, fill in the blank. And you keep going. There are going to be setbacks. Recognize it. It's okay. You're going to have it. That's fine. Plan, make a plan. If you know you're going to have a setback, then what is your plan for getting back on track? If I went to somebody's birthday party And instead of having just a little sliver of a cake, I had a regular size piece. What does that mean for me? And not to punish myself, but to go, okay, I had a setback. So now I'm just going to be a little bit more conscious of what I'm eating or not eating, you know? And when you have that small success, celebrate it. Celebrate it. You know, you had it. No one can take this away from yourself. Pace yourself about what you're doing. Plan ahead. We talked about that. You know, delegate what you can, communicate, personalize, and list family members. Delegate. If you're going on a diet, you know what, and you're going to go to a potluck, you're not bringing the desserts. You're bringing the healthy stuff to eat, whatever that means for you. Okay. You know, make a reasonable time for completing a task and be flexible. You know, if I get to 2 months out and notice I've lost 5 pounds, that's great. But you know what? I may not lose the 10 that in the time that I had planned. You know what? That's great. I can keep this going. Relax. You know, things change. It's okay. And weave together different things that may help you. You know, I read, the Chinese food place said that this is only X amount of calories, but I really wanted Mexican food. What can I do with that? All right. Here's something that I found, and I want you to know that the Northwest Network is a fabulous resource for some support planning and boundaries. And this publication, It Takes a Village People, is one of the finest pieces of literature, as far as I'm concerned, that I have found, and I really truly enjoy it. The other thing that I can think of is a great story can change the way you look at the world, not just if you're reading a book, but if you create it for yourself. It can help you let go of beliefs or identify beliefs that limit you and realize that you may have more options than you assume. Remember those stories about, you know, you picked the ending or the different endings and the stories went off in different directions? So how about you doing that from yourself? What would I do if I believed fill in the blank for you is possible? What would you do? What do you do? Because beliefs can either hold you down or they can propel you forward. Stories that grab your heart are going to inspire you, and they're going to help motivate you. And you know what? Telling you about something that, you know, people who say you're bigger than that, you can do that, that's a head thing. It's the emotional center we want to get to move ourselves forward. So professional care, when you eat lunch, you eat it away from your desk. Supervision, how do you know what you're doing is if you're overdoing or underdoing or getting a different perspective? You know, how do you do that? Leave your work at work. Don't take it home with you. Plan your next career move. If you want to stay where you are right now, that's perfectly fine. How do you get more information? How do you make yourself the best at what you want to do? Take mental health days or mental health moments when you feel that. Take all of your vacation days and sick days, especially if they don't roll over. You know, here again is some stuff for boundaries, again from the Northwest Network. I want you to understand that when we think of boundaries, we think of them as no. That's the first thing we think about. But you know what? Boundaries contain yeses in them. It's about what you do want, not necessarily what you don't want. All right. And if we can phrase them that way, it is so much better. So here are the ways to get what you need. Think it through, talk about it, get clear, and find ways to express it using I statements. Not what you do, it's what I want. It's the positive stuff. And if someone can't respect your boundary, you know what? Change the situation. If I tell you that you can't wear perfume around me and you insist on wearing perfume, That's fine. I just can't be around you anymore. We can talk on the phone. Okay? All right. Okay. Simple ways to stay hydrated. Here they are. Soak in a warm tub. I've been talking about this all around. Take breaks from social media and electronics. Listen to soothing music. And what soothing music for me is not soothing music for you. Create a playlist, if you will. Create it. And whatever that means, if you're not around it, sing it in your head. You know, I know that I was talking with someone and what they were telling was important, but I couldn't stand it anymore. I started playing my playlist in my head, kept me stress-free for quite some time. We talked about sunshine and making time to play and spending time with friends and avoiding alcohol. We're going to talk about things to say no, which is about your boundaries, gratitude list. I want to talk about laughter. A good laugh is going to relax your muscles for at least 45 minutes. Be ridiculous. Look at kids. Look at how they funny, zany, silly laughter. So pretend you're a 3-year-old and look at the world that way and do things that are, ask a million questions, climb a tree, fingerprint, get it, whatever it is for you, do it with wonderment and joy, So that's what you do. Okay. Ask a million questions. Remember that your past has given you the strength and the wisdom to get here. Celebrate it. Your present continues to give you strength and wisdom. Celebrate that too. Your future is built around your strength and wisdom. Continue your learning and celebrate that too. Yes, you will get the post-test and the certificate, Gabrielle. Go to your meeting. I'm sorry this is running long. Here's one thing I found weaving stuff together. If you add 1 jar of baby food, banana puree, to a box of Duncan Hines Supreme Banana Supreme Cake Mix, it turns out so good. You have absolutely no idea. And if you get the sense that I love to bake, you're right. For those of you who are still hanging in there with me, I thank you. I've got a wellness tip for baking. Someone else cleans up the kitchen. They're all going to enjoy it. Let them clean up after you. Old beliefs do not lead to new beginnings. You've got to change your way of thinking. Don't believe everything you think. You are not your beliefs. You choose your beliefs. All right? Let go of whatever isn't working. Look outside of your maze, whatever that may be. Here are some books that I can recommend. They're by Spencer Johnson. You can probably find them at a used bookstore. What other books open your eyes or have you used? I think that's really important. But here's something else I want to point out. Remember Grandma's pumpkin bread recipe? Over the generations, it has morphed. Here it is. I asked my family if I could share, and they said yes. But I want you to know that this is the way I now make it. I don't like nutmeg, and I don't like cloves. So I don't put them in. What I do put in is I add more cinnamon and I add sugar. And I will also add some orange rinds. All right. One of my sisters uses orange juice instead of water. Big discussion in my family, big debate between my sisters and my cousins as to whether it's dried fruit, fresh fruit, or frozen fruit. Doesn't matter. They all look good. Some people put in pecans. Some people put in walnuts in my family. Other people use rum flavoring. Some people in my family, as one of my sisters does, doesn't use any nuts, but she puts in almond extract. Some people will eat this with cream cheese. Some people will toast it and put peanut butter on it. Some people use it as breakfast and you put fried eggs on top of it. Some people eat it plain with ice cream, whipped cream, whatever. You know what the bottom line is? We all call this Grandma's pumpkin bread. and we all enjoy it. And that is what I think wellness is all about, weaving stuff together, and what looks good and feels good and right for you is exactly what you need. The other thing when we talked about over here, old beliefs do not lead to new beginnings. The younger generation in my family has decided that during this time, right before Thanksgiving until right up to New Year's, the proper way to say goodbye, old beliefs do not leave to old things, is to say cookies and gingerbread. So my thanks to you this season is cookies and gingerbread for everyone. And thank you for attending. I am going to put up the post test right now. Also know that it is going to come in the, you're going to have a, you are going to have a, excuse me, a follow-up email that's going to come. Here we go. I'm sorry. You're going to see, okay. That's going to come in a cookies. Thank you, y'all. A post test that's going to come, and an evaluation, and the PowerPoint in a follow-up email in about an hour. Thank you so much for your time and attention today. Cookies and gingerbread to all of you. I appreciate your attention. Thank you.